exactly what. Okay, so let's start letting everybody in. Let's welcome everybody to the party. Good morning, ladies, or good afternoon. It's almost afternoon for, it is afternoon for you guys on the East Coast, right, Kim?
Yeah, we're at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, we're still waking up over here on the West Coast.
Tell me about my future self, Kim.
You can tell by the beverage I'm drinking what time it is. So if it were still pre-noon, this would be coffee.
But yes.
If it's after 5, it probably is not just bubble water.
Well, let's go ahead and kick off. Ladies, thank you so much. As you know, we are so excited to be bringing you this 6-week series where we're helping you to navigate NAR, our norm. And today I'm especially excited for some of the powerhouse speakers that we're bringing to you. And so what you can expect today is for the first half an hour, you're really going to get to be a fly on the wall. You're going to get to see this conversation transpire between our different leaders in different markets and hear, what's working for them, what's missing, what's broken, what's confusing. And then in the second half hour, we're going to open that up for you ladies to ask your questions directly and get whatever, whether if you want to share something that you're winning with, that's fantastic. Also, maybe you're, struggling. Last week, we had some ladies who shared like specific struggles. And so this is the opportunity to get some good clarity around those. So we're super excited to kick it off today. And today we have Mindy Jones, Kim Mills, and Megan Bell. And if you don't know these ladies, you are in for a treat. So Mindy Jones is out of Arizona alongside Kristen. And Mindy, real quick, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I run the Amy Jones group here at Real Broker. We are a team of a dozen hardworking mamas in real estate. And we also have a nonprofit called Community on Purpose that we run alongside of our business to support organizations that serve youth and families. And lastly, I am also an Exactly What to Say certified guide. So I am constantly trying to find opportunities to improve our communication in all parts of our life.
And that is why we nominated Mindy as like the official speaker today, because she's so great with words. So thank you, Mindy. We're super excited to hear from you. And next up, we have Kim Mills out of Ohio. And so Kim, tell us a little bit about yourself and your business.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm Kim Mills. I'm in Columbus, Ohio. I've been licensed since 2010 and always have been selling in Columbus. So I don't know, a little bit about me. I'm a mom of 2. I have a second business, which is all about helping agents better market themselves on social media. So lots to juggle in general, but I think I thrive when I do that better.
I love that, Kim. And lastly, but not leastly, we have Megan Bell, who's also in Ohio. We only have 3, right? Do we have 4? We have Whitney. Okay, good. We do only have 3. Sorry, Kim and Whitney are partners. And so I'm used to if Kim is on, then Whitney is on. But so Megan Bell, you are also in Ohio. And Megan, tell us a little bit about your business.
Yes, I'm in Ohio, and thank you for having me. I actually recently just switched to Real from Remax, and it's been about 10 days. Nothing crazy. Mainly my business, I do between 75 and 100 transactions a year, typically by myself, but with switching to Real, I decided to get a transaction coordinator. So I'm super excited about that. And my business, a lot of my business now is anywhere between probably 94 and 96% repeat. So I decided this year that I wanted to do something different and be able to help others out in this business. So with that, I also created Connect and Cultivate in Columbus with Kristen. So super excited to make the change and to be on here.
I love that. All right, ladies. Well, on that note, we're just going to kick it off. Mindy, do you just kind of want to dive in on, sharing with everyone what your business looks like and start the conversation off with Megan and Kim?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's such a great opportunity for me to get into this space here and for everybody just to kind of be a fly on the wall for us, because I don't think we get enough opportunities to sit down and talk with people who are really navigating through the changes that we've experienced in the last month at a high level. And so, sometimes agents throughout the entire lifeline of their career will do maybe 3 to 5 transactions. And so it's hard to get in front of as many examples as possible, right? So when you have a group like this and we do over 100 transactions, you just heard Megan talk about the number of transactions she does, and Kim, and everybody all in one space, we really get the opportunity to explore really what are people saying about the changes. So I think the biggest change for us here in Arizona, and then I'd love to hear kind of from Kim and Megan what you guys are experiencing. The biggest change for us has just been an increase in the communication with our clients and a greater level of clarity. And so I think in a lot of ways, when I look back at the way that we've done business for the last 12 years, I think we moved a little too quickly with our clients. I mean, we always prided ourselves on thinking that our clients were the most educated, the most prepared, the most empowered to make the best decisions for themselves. And now, because we've had our hand forced to change things the way that we do in terms of certain types of disclosures or conversations or paperwork, I think that it's really improved the way that we've done business, and we've been able to have much better conversations with our clients. And what we found is that when we talk with people who have no experience with us, so a brand new cold client who comes, say, from something like Yelp, for example. We recently had a client well over $1 million come to us from Yelp, had a terrible previous agent experience, completely cold, knew nothing of us. And we went into the conversation extra clear, extra prepared with some new visuals, which I'd love to hear what you guys are doing different. And the getting them to be our client felt like a total breeze. And it was because we had such a greater level of intentionality around talking about what we were going to do for them, and then really gaining that buy-in through a really clear employment agreement that ensured that they felt empowered because they knew what we were going to deliver. They knew what it was going to cost them in return. They knew all of the ways that we were going to help alleviate some of those fees and costs when we went into negotiations. We were able to look at the full big picture for them and the cost it would take for them to get into the home. And I think that that was a huge win for us in terms of these changes that we've seen over the last month. So for us, it's been extremely positive, but it's taken us time to get there, right? We've been practicing these conversations with our team now for probably a good 5 or 6 months in anticipation of these changes. So I'm curious for the both of you, what are you seeing in your market in terms of actual changes, either in how you're doing business or in the conversations that are coming up, and are they positive?
I'll go. Oh, you go, Megan.
Okay. Kim and I also kind of share the same market. But I think for me personally, kind of what's happening is the buyer consultations are more important than ever. Part of that being I'm somebody that, if someone would call, my goal was to get them on the phone and get them to the property. That way they had a comfort level. Well, now I'm actually sitting down with them prior and meeting and just kind of making it basic for them, like times have changed. These are the changes. And I think that's probably helped me because I think people appreciate that instead of just showing up at the property and being like, here, sign this, whatever. That's one thing that's been pretty significant for me is meeting them, even if it's a half an hour, but just saying, hey, I just want to go over the process. So that's one thing. Second thing for me that I've thought, and even as much as this past weekend, I did an open house, the communication with other agents, no longer like, just texting or whatever. I had 2 people come through an open house they had an agent. I called both of them, talked to them, and it actually ended up being a great conversation. And then I feel like you can also collaborate with them as far as like, what are they doing also? So that was good.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything that you guys have said. I think our brokerage made a really sound decision to stop, just basically really start training us months ago. I mean, I feel like in March we started talking about this. And so I think that was helpful because it started to take, there was just more of a conversation about it instead of it feeling really unknown or just something that's in the news that maybe isn't going to touch us. Ironically, I also sit on a task force within our MLS committee within the board. And so I learned a lot about, just in terms of preparation of what things we needed to be able to quickly think through, what we felt like maybe members of our board would want and not want, down to like when we turned off the button of commissions being mentioned. It was all discussed with this smaller group. But within that smaller group, there were a lot of top producing agents from all different sizes of brokers. And I think what I realized in a lot of those conversations is, be it you're brand new to the industry or you've been in this a long time, it's a huge change. And so you have to think through, a lot of people don't like change. And so I think you've got people that are fighting it. I think you've got people who are just innately scared or operating out of fear, which kind of puts a guard up, right? So when it's agent to agent, I feel like how I'm trying to face this is to just lead with calm and try to assume positive intent on the other side, because I do think it's a big change for everyone. So not making the assumption that just because maybe commission isn't mentioned in the actual contract, is it really not in the contract? Like, I just think we're going to have to go through some months where it's bumpy and messy and be okay with that. But I want to try to lead those conversations with the other agents versus being reactive. So that's one thing that I've noticed. And then I would say the second thing is in terms of our consumers and our clients, I am very much referral based and repeat clients. And I've had conversations with so many of my clients that aren't nervous about it. Like, I think we are nervous about it because it's a change in the industry, but in the sense of how you explain it to your client, the phrase I get is, oh, that makes a ton of sense, And so I think it's all in practicing what that speech is, getting really concise with your words and understanding how to explain it to somebody who's not in this every day, and then be willing to be quiet and let them ask questions. I think you learn so much from the questions that they're asking, and being okay to hear a little bit of quiet when you're talking about this and ask them, like, what questions do you have? Like, what does this bring up for you? I just think you don't have to feel like you have to answer everything. Let them guide you with the questions that they have. And 9 times out of 10, I just feel like we haven't had that many difficult questions when you're facing it with your client.
Yeah, I think that's really good for people on the call to hear, because if you're not doing a high transaction volume, or you haven't had a lot of opportunities to naturally have this conversation in your daily business, you can anticipate that there's going to be a ton of conversations, right? It's kind of like when we practice going into a phone conversation, it's easier for us to come up with all the things that we don't want somebody to say instead of spending time practicing what we do want to say. Right. And that mindset can keep us from picking up the phone to lead generate, and can keep us from having these conversations about changes in our industry. And so I think it's really important for people to hear that the majority of the conversations that we're having at a very high level, time and time again, are primarily positive with our clients, that they perceive it as a benefit, that they're getting educated, that the changes are being positioned to them in a positive light, that really indicate a desire from our community to become more professional, more clear, more transparent, to advocate on behalf of the consumer, right? If we're using that kind of language with our clients, it's going to be hard for them to say that this was not a helpful change for them. You both mentioned not only the buyer consultation, but more improved communication with your clients, past clients, and with agents. Are there any specific tools or scripts or images or documents or anything like that that you guys are using in your business to help with that conversation? I can share a couple of mine, but if you guys maybe want to share something that you're using that maybe you weren't using before.
I can start. We have 2 documents that we're asking people to sign. And so what I did, I actually wrote out what I would typically say on the phone. I put it in a Google Doc, and I basically, after I have the conversation, sometimes it's a phone call, sometimes it's a text, but I'm like, hey, heads up, here are some things that have changed since the last time you've probably seen a house. And I basically need your signature before we go in. But then I say, the second part of this document is how I help you, how I work for you, and how I get paid. And I just don't mince words. Like, I just try to make it really clear.
Mhm.
Then when I send it in dot loop with with the signatures. And I copy that same exact message from my Google Doc into the message that goes in dot loop, because I'm just like, if they're gonna, see it twice, I think it'll make more sense. And I haven't had a lot of pushback on it. I think the big thing is, again, it's an opportunity for us to explain what we're doing. You don't have to think that this conversation has to take an hour. And I think you just say, like, this is what I do for you. It's sort of like what we are doing anyway, but you always talk about it in the middle or at the end of a transaction instead of just saying it up front. And so I think you just embrace that and just say it up front. And then, to me, I'm like, if they're not going to sign the document, like, I don't think that's my person. So I haven't had an issue with that, but I do think it's like, show your hand. If you're only going to work with me on this one property, then great, you can sign the document that way. But that's also like major intel for me to know, like, is this going to be somebody that I really want to invest in, or do I need to do a little bit of digging on that side? So I've just tried to keep it really clear. Buyer consult, I think more visuals helps, but I'm not trying to complicate that buyer consult. I think it's just, again, asking the questions and then explaining, like, this is what I do for you and this is my fee.
Yeah, I love that. And Megan, I want to hear from you too, but one thing I just want to comment on what Kim said, and she made the comment that if the person doesn't want to sign the form, that then maybe that's not her person. And I think we hear that a lot. And I think it's really important that we understand the weight behind what it is that we're saying. We're not being flippant, right? And just saying, oh, if they don't want to only work with me, then we don't want to work with them, or we don't want to find out their story, or right. It's not that. What we're saying is that the purchasing of a house is a process. It is a journey, and it necessitates that the people that we are supporting have a level of trust in us, because there's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, there's going to be many points of negotiation and complication throughout the process. We obviously hope that it goes very smoothly for them, but we've got to build a strong relationship and rapport with our clients on the front end. And while it takes time for them to truly trust us in the process, we want to be sure that when we start in this transaction with them, that there is a mutual relationship so that we can do the best at our job. And I think anybody on this call will probably be able to recall a time where they worked with somebody who from day one did not trust them to be their advisor and was not willing to engage in that mutual relationship. And it made everything more difficult, not only for us as the advisor, but for them as the client, right? They don't get the full benefit of having a professional advisor if they're not willing to engage in that relationship. So I think that that is something that we need to pay attention to if we're not already, is kind of that gut instinct. And it's very hard to do that when you're chasing the next transaction or chasing the next paycheck, right? And often we will do things and work with people when we really need the money, even though something inside of us says that we shouldn't. And I can tell you the best guidance at that point is that clarity, to be very clear that we can operate the best and provide the best for our clients when we can establish that mutual relationship with them, that it's in their best interest to work with somebody that they trust and that they will trust going into the process. So I just think that that's an important conversation to have for the folks on the phone too. So Megan, how about you? What kind of tools or scripts or images are you using now?
Very similar to Kim. I also have a text message that I'll talk to them either whether it's in person or on the phone. Then when I'm sending the documents, I'll send them kind of a breakdown, like highlights of the same conversation. I did have a situation last Friday where someone wanted to set up a showing. It's a commercial property. I never talked to him before, started talking to him on the phone and explained it. And he's like, oh, well, let me talk to my wife. I'm like, fine, calls back. I explain it to him again, and he's like, well, what if we don't want to work with you? And I said, I'm like, actually, the same thing could happen. I could say, you know what, it's not a good fit. And I'm like, I totally get it. And I think you have to be transparent with people. And I'm like, I get it. And I said, we can do an agreement for this specific address for one day. After that, if you decide, hey, I've met someone else, I'm like, it's completely fine. So it was like, I think once you kind of, or I kind of went into the details, he was like, oh, okay. So long story short, they looked again yesterday and we joked about it. He's like, I just didn't want to sign up for something for 6 months or whatever. So I think as long as you're transparent, people get it. But like everyone said, it is a new thing. And the other thing I was going to say is every single person has heard about it. So if you go into it thinking, oh, they have no idea, they've heard some variation. I have a guy that's a friend and he's like, how's this going to affect your income? So then I started explaining, he's like, oh, okay. So I think the more transparent you can be, the better.
And I think that's one of the things that we can do, right, is start to make a list of all of the comments or conversations that we expect to come up, right? So, and exactly what to say, we would call this like our critical conversations, things that we know are going to happen because they've happened before. They're probably going to continue to happen on repeat. And if we could do really well at mastering those conversations, it would make a big impact to our business or our personal life. And so that's one of them. And I know that that's a critical conversation because I've heard the same thing, right? For people who aren't necessarily in the place of buying a house today, but who value you and what they do, what you do, their comment about this has been, how is this going to affect how you get paid, right? I mean, anybody on the phone heard that? I've heard that, right? Everyone's hearing that same thing. So one of the things you could do is start to plan for, when I hear that, when someone says that to me, what are the 3 or 5 things that I want to convey when that happens? And those each should touch on, one, how does the change impact the consumer, right? So that the person making that comment to you knows that your focus is truly on the consumer and the consumer's experience. 2, what will happen when the person you're talking to is in the place to be ready to buy a home, and how will that relationship go with you? And 3, what kind of tidbit can you empower them with so that when someone else makes a comment to them about it, they know to refer that person directly over to you, right? So when we think about what are these quick sort of elevator comments, if you will, where you need a quick response, what are the 2, 3, 4 things that you want to make sure to get across when someone says that? For us, we haven't started using any different visuals except for some that were provided by the brokerage that are also available online. We've started using some of those tools in our consultations with our clients, just because I think they kind of lay out a good platform for us to kind of write all over a graph and be able to have some conversations if the need comes up. But a couple things we started saying differently. We used to talk about closing costs. And closing costs for us typically meant your fees to title and escrow and your lending fees. So we would say, you know, if you need help with closing costs or down payment, or right when we're trying to figure out all of the buckets. For some reason, closing costs never included how we got paid, which was just sort of a stupid mistake on our part, right? So we stopped talking about closing costs and we started talking about cash to close. So when we talk with our clients during our consultation, we say that we're focused on 2 numbers, your cash to close and your monthly payment. Which are those, either are you most concerned about, or do you think that you're going to need help with? And so that way in our consultation, we put together all of the potential cash to close numbers. So that's your real estate representation, your fiduciary representation. That's the fee for service for that representation. That's the fee for service for all of your title work. That's the fee for service for all of your lending work, for the ability for you to get the money. So we kind of put those all in the same category and talk about them the same way. And then any of your in-time fees, that's your, inspection and your appraisal and whatever that might be during the transaction itself. And then there's your down payment number, right? So you've got all of these kind of laid out as your potential fees. And then we start at the beginning and we say, which of these do you need help with? Do you think you'll need help with your down payment? No, we've saved X number of dollars. Okay. Do you think that you're going to need help with any of your fee for services? Well, we might not want to have to pay all of those. Okay. So maybe this is an area that we can work on getting some help from the seller on. Can you pay for your appraisal and your inspection, right? So it relays out the fees that it will take in order for them to get into a home and doesn't separate our fee from that. And then this is helpful again when we're in transaction and maybe we get a counter and the listing agent on the other side decides to counter in the compensation bucket versus any of the other cash to close fees or the sales price. Then we can go back and really just use a net sheet for our buyers to say, now here's the adjusted cash to close and here's the expected monthly payment. Is there anything over here that you still need some help with, or do we want to just tackle this monthly payment part, right? And so that way we're not breaking out our fees as an optional fee, just like the title fees are not optional and neither are the lending fees. So that cash to close and the net sheet conversation has been one of the biggest changes for us. And then the other one is using the 5-star offer process, which I'm not going to go into the whole concept of all of the different pieces, but it's ensuring that one of the 5 pieces of explaining a 5-star offer to our sellers is the agent and the representation on the other side. Because I think one sort of trap that we can fall into is when we talk to our sellers about offering compensation on the other side. I think it can often sound like we're working for the buyers because we say things like, well, you have such great representation on this side and you want to have great representation on the other side. And that doesn't sound very seller centric. So I think we need to watch that language that we use. And when we talk about a 5-star offer on the seller side, when we talk about representation, what we're talking about is we're talking about making sure that we have another check on the buyer from the other side, that they've been pre-qualified as much as possible, that someone has taken the time to walk them through the process. So it's more likely that they're aware of the things to come and less likely to cancel, right? Like we want to walk through it from a very seller-centric perspective. So I think those have been the biggest changes for us in terms of language and the way that we're using that. Which makes me think of this idea about value propositions. So I feel like this has come up quite a bit in how we're talking about our value. And I'm curious, there's a ton of ways that I have heard that people have been focusing on value propositions. You have the people who are writing the list of 750 things that they do for their clients, including making photocopies of their contracts and giving to them, which, by the way, everyone can do that for themselves. So I don't know that I'd be leading with that kind of administrative work on your value proposition. But I'm curious how you guys are dealing with that kind of conversation. I can share how we're doing with ours too, but Kim or Megan, is there certain things that you've changed or focused on in terms of value proposition?
It only took me 28 minutes to get to mention social media. I actually think this is a giant opportunity for anyone who's willing to step into social media, because I have found in my own business that one of the biggest pluses for me has been being able to show value when people aren't buying homes. So how do you stay relevant with your client base, knowing that this is like once every 5 or 7 or 10 years that they're going to see you and be interacting with you? How do you show them what you're doing? How do you show them on the daily what you're doing? And what better way to do it by actually like videoing yourself and telling them what you do in their language, right? So I think this is a huge opportunity for people that are willing to do that, to be strategic and show your value in a way where, you know, yeah, there's 780 things I do on the daily. So let me show you one of them, you know, and just breaking it down in simple visuals so they understand that you're not just unlocking a door. There is so much more that goes into this. I think You know, I feel like sometimes we pride ourselves when you're having success as an agent that you want it to feel seamless and not stressful and all these things. And I am definitely one of those people. Like I want my clients to feel like it's easy for them, but at the same time, I don't want them to think that this is just like I'm just sitting back like watching it all happen, right? We're putting in a lot of work to make it not feel stressful for them. And so you have to show it. I mean, you have to show the process. And I just don't think you're going to get that across in newsletters and mailers and all of that. Now, I think those are still great things to do. But I think, you know, if you can show up daily in something like Instagram on your stories and with reels, I think they remember what you're doing and why you're doing it. So I would lean hard into social.
I will kind of piggyback on what Miss Kim said. I actually work with Kim and they do videos for me, but it's huge. The amount of people that see what you're doing. I had a girl, Kim knows about this. I worked out with her at a gym 10 years ago, hadn't seen her. She sent a message and her message came through on a video that I did about seeing something crazy in a house. And she's like, oh my God, I know nothing about this. So same thing with this. I think it's more like, hey, it may fall out of contract. We may do an inspection and there's something crazy, but here's what I'll do for you. Yes, same thing. Like I have a list that I include in a packet that I give to buyers, but I still think being able to show people that things do happen and you're there along every step of the way. I just had a lady buy a house and she lives out of state. She's moving here. She texted me over the weekend. She had a contractor going in and the power was shut out. What was a breaker was flipped. So she's like, can you please go? I know I closed. I know you don't have to do anything for me, but those are the people that you do want to take care of because they're going to remember and you're showing you still have your value. So yes.
I love that. And I just want to leave with one tip and then maybe we can open it up to everybody for questions. But the only thing that I would say about value propositions is don't get stuck thinking that you have to have one value proposition for everybody that you serve. I think the most important piece of a value proposition is to ask yourself two questions, and that's who are the people that I serve and what are the problems that I solve for them, and build value propositions that are based on the answer to those two questions. Because like Megan's story, your value proposition for someone, for example, who's buying out of state may be three very specific things to the idea that they are not local, which will be very different from your value proposition to someone who is in state and buying their first house, right? So if you sit down and you think about who is the person that I'm serving and what are the problems that I'm solving for them, your value proposition is specifically around those problems that you're solving for that person. And I think the more specific we can get about the audience that we're serving and easily change our buyer consultations into, first-time home buyer consultations or relocation buyer consultations or move-up buyer consultations or whatever strategy sessions, whatever you want to use, the content in all of these is going to be very similar, but the wrapper or the pitch or the value proposition, it's going to sound very specific to the people that you're serving.
Oh my goodness, ladies. Let me just say, as a seasoned agent, I just love the opportunity to hear other seasoned agents and what you're doing in your business. This is so valuable. Mindy, that pivotal switch from cash to close is like a game changer, right? Because like you said, you're not alienating the conversation around your compensation. You're including it as part of the standard process. And it just changes the complete, thinking process and the framework around how they're seeing that. And then Kim, when you were saying like, get on social, whether you're a seasoned agent and you're navigating this, or you're that brand new agent, which some of us are jealous of, you brand new agents that don't have to unlearn anything. This is an exciting moment, right? This is an exciting moment to have a reason to show up. How many times have we like just went like who wants to hear from us? Like, what do we have to say? But because the media is putting this everywhere, my husband just asked me yesterday, he's like, so how does this affect, like, how does this affect buying? Because I heard this on the news. And so this is the moment to deliver value based off of what everything else is in their world speaking about, right? And so I just think this is really good and really powerful. So ladies, this is a moment where we're going to open it up for you. And whether your cameras are on or off, you know, you can pop questions in, you can ask those. But really make this your individualized struggles or your individualized wins and get even more value from these powerhouses. I think Yvonne's trying to turn herself on, but she might have just turned her screen off.
She's trying to raise her hand and be respectful. So thank
you.
you so much, you guys. I was here last week. You can lower my hand if you want. I'm very nervous. I don't know why I'm nervous too. I'm so flattered and grateful to be, like you said, with a bunch of seasoned agents. I was an investor and then became a realtor, and this is all kind of new. And last week, you guys really helped me to, I've sat down with the buyers. I've had the buyer consultation. I feel confident in that. Then something happened, and I know this is recorded, so I'm being careful. And we talked about bananas last week, but so I met with some people and I said, they were like, well, we're only paying 2 bananas, right? We're only offering, and I didn't even ask. They just started coming at me with, I'm paying 2 bananas. Okay, well, if I bring a buyer who's qualified, we can close in your time, da 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 da. Did my value prop, I want at least 2.5 bananas. Okay, great. Well, then I put an offer in on a property that I offered a full price. We negotiated some closing costs, my terms, put the sheet in, and she called me and she's like, we're not responding. My buyer doesn't want to respond. And it really messed with my head. And so I'm negotiating my client's best terms and I cut myself short. So it really, I ended up accepting, and I only say this because it was a family member for me. So I told her I would accept. But in the future, I'm just nervous. How do we fight for ourselves when we're negotiating the best terms for the client, when the seller doesn't want to give anything? And I understand we're all talking about the buyers paying us or making up the difference, and that I'm in that. But what had happened was I talked to a few TCs, I talked to a few other agents, and they're like, oh, no one's paying, so just be grateful you got anything. And I was thinking, and I'm like, you guys need to come to this call on Monday, because I heard from a lot of women who were saying, we need to wait, no, we earn this. So I just need some confidence, because I woke up all weekend beating myself up that I shortchanged myself, and I don't know how to believe in myself when the agent on the other side is knocking me and other people. Does that make sense? I'm a little nervous. I don't know if I'm asking the right question.
Well, you
You're
don't have to
good.
be
Oh,
nervous.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, don't be nervous, because I think that's the type of stuff that's happening. One thing that I've done kind of more recent, do you use like a net to seller sheet at all?
No, so I heard that here for the first, I do it on a seller, but not for the buyers. And I wrote that down in some of my notes that I really have to understand this when presenting it to my buyer. But with this buyer, I was willing to accept whatever they were offering, because it's a new first-time buyer. But I didn't know how to sell myself to the listing agent to sell to her. I'm bringing a fully priced offer, fully qualified, can close in 21 days. And she had me all messed up. I didn't even know how to fight for myself, because everyone was like, be grateful you're getting anything. Be grateful you're getting a banana. And I was like, I just got in my head. So I think this is happening out there more often, not just me. So my question is, ladies, how do we prepare, and being in here, to like step back and go, wait, I got to renegotiate this?
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Okay, so the fighting for yourself that you did was to get your client. That's the fighting for yourself. I think the mindset, I think there's 2 mindset shifts that have to happen. And I think this process primarily is a struggle of the mindset shifts. And I think this is why it's important that you're clear in who you're surrounding yourself with. And it's clear in, oh, is there a, you guys hear that?
Yeah, I think we got it, Mindy.
Okay. I think it's important that you're clear in who you're surrounding yourself with. And I think it's important that you are practicing the things that are holding you back, because it's not the paperwork and it's not the math, it's the mindset. I think, first of all, we need to stop saying we're going to accept whatever someone else is paying, because that has gotten us into this mental trap that our fees are negotiated by and determined by people who are not our clients. So that is the first thing that I would take out of your vocabulary, because what your fee for service is agreed upon by your client well before you find the house that they're looking for. That is the first thing. So if we keep saying things like, I'll take whatever they'll give us, it keeps the mindset in your brain that that negotiation happens with the house and with a stranger. And that's not the case. The fighting that you do is to get the client at the fee for service that you told them. That's one. Secondly, we need to get away from thinking that the seller or the seller's agent is at all involved in what our fee is, meaning that we aren't fighting for our fee with the other person. What we're doing is we're presenting them an offer that has 5 to 10 different variables, including things like down payment, closing date, home warranty, HOA transfer fees, whatever it is, right? There's 10 different variables. And the seller's agent is sending you back something that says, here's my adjustment to 1 to 10 of the variables that you presented. And it is then our job to take that back to our client and say, here's where your buckets have been adjusted. Here's what they are going to bring to you and to offer to you. The fact that they come back and they take a full price offer with that close date on it and don't want to also offer compensation towards your buyer agent fees, one, shouldn't impact the buyer moving forward unless it's just more than they want to put out of their pocket at closing, which could come up at any time, right? We need to be having those conversations during our buyer consultations that there's going to be times that the numbers just don't work. Right? You find a car that you like and they bring you the monthly payment amount and they go back to their little glass house and come back to you 47 times. And the number they come back with after you've been there for 10 hours still isn't the one that you want to pay. You don't leave with the car, right? These clients were whole people before we started working with them. We cannot magically create outcomes for them that don't work for them. And so when we get that adjustment back from the seller, our job is to go back to the buyer and say, do we want to adjust in any of these places? And if we can't make the adjustments, then we need to be able to have a conversation with the agent that isn't about compensation. It's about concessions from the seller to make this well-qualified buyer be able to move forward. We need to not have the conversation about our compensation with two people who did not sign an agreement to work with us from the beginning. So I think those are the biggest changes. And I think that's something that we've been talking about on our team week after week after week after week, because it is the mindset that is taking the longest for us to be able to change in this process. It's not the paperwork, it's not the math. It is our ability to change the way that we're having these conversations.
I would just add to that, Yvonne. I think knowing that this is like a family member and this is kind of an exception bucket for you, I think you still have to go through the same conversation with them, because I think they need to understand that, I mean, in a way, you actually show even more value to them if you are going to offer a discount or something like that. But I think I have found that like when I start to like sweat and get like, oh my God, how did I get here? It's because I didn't do it at the beginning. And so that's what I've learned, is that as awkward and as uncomfortable and as new and scary as all of this stuff is to like lean in it at the beginning, because you can get them to ask you the questions, and candidly, that whole scenario can be discussed, and maybe you even make it happen in that consult where it's like, let me play out a couple scenarios for you. One where I'm going to get 3 bananas, one where I'm going to get no bananas. And if I get no bananas, here's what it looks like, where you tell them, like, I'm not doing this for free. You'll find your words and how you say this. But I think they need to know that you are working on their behalf, right? And that it's not pro bono work. And I actually think when people hear that, they know that they want to give you something. I don't think that people are expecting us to do this for nothing. I just think it's in that pre-work. I also feel like I've said I was going to do this during like the crazy of 2020 to 2023, where, in a way, I'm so glad that time is over, because I felt like it was like, who's the fastest? The fastest is who's winning, not who's the best, not who's the best negotiator or, the best representative for their clients, just who can get there fastest and write the offer. I feel like now it's like you actually have the ability to like pause for a second, explain it. And what I wanted to do at that time, which clearly I now need to do, is write a resume of yourself. Like have a resume of like what you do and what you offer, and just send that with the offer. Because I think that and a lender resume is just as important. Because to me, if you have a seller that is offering no bananas, I think that's unfortunate. But I actually think you're going to have people who you're representing, if it's a buyer, that say, I don't even want to look at it because that's not how I want to work. And so I just think that's the kind of stuff that we have to have the conversations. We weren't having them before. And, candidly, we didn't have a backstop before. I know people were probably mid-transaction or maybe at the closing table realizing they weren't getting as many bananas as they thought they were getting, And so I just think we have to be a little bit better at our job, and we just have to do it at the beginning. The last thing I was going to say, because I pulled up this quote, because I think this really helped me the first time I started entering this territory of like, why does this feel so hard for me? Or why do I just feel not icky about it, but like, it's not natural. Like some of these things aren't natural. So here's the quote. I don't know who said it. It's not me, but the magic you're looking for is in the work you're avoiding, right? I think it's a moment where step into the uncomfortable, get comfortable with the uncomfortable, be calm during the uncomfortable moments, ask questions, and be okay with a little bit of uncomfortable silence. And it's not going to be like that forever. I think you're going to have 1 or 2 or 3 of these like tough conversations. And with each one of those, you get so much better for the next one. And you just have to be okay with that. Like, it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be a little bit messy, and that's okay.
Ladies, real quick.
Thank you, ladies. Go.
Oh, thank you, Yvonne. That was good, right? That was tons about you.
It was really good. And I want to say something that 2 things I just really want to point out. This call has helped me last time and this time too. I'm trying to figure out how to write a resume. And I know, go ahead, Randita, because I forgot. Go ahead.
Are you sure? If
Yeah,
remember, just come.
What happened is in the middle of the night, I realized how much we pay monthly and dues and all these things. And at the end, after this, I'm barely breaking even. And I was listening to people really put a value proposition on me and all my work, like you said, like all of you have said. And I know sometimes our brokers are just to try and not get us in lawsuits, but I got to figure out something else out here. And that was the thing. And the other agent, I just want to say, really confused me because she's like, well, I'm the lender and I'm in nursing school and I'm an agent and I'm this and I'm that. And I'm like, I could care less. But she was coming at me. So I just want to say this has been so helpful to me. So thank you.
Well, we love that. And I just wanted to add this to the conversation. One thing, a mistake agents make that we have to make sure we don't allow agents to pull us into is the conversation around us and what we do and what we don't do. So last week, when I talked about presenting along with your offer package, a letter or a resume to the seller, it is that agent's obligation to present all items to the seller, right? And so we should really avoid these conversations. A big aha I had this week in negotiating deals was that I was going to have a seller potentially, depending on what offer they accepted, pay more bananas than a seller has ever paid in my 22-year career. And it was interesting to me because the bananas were never a topic. The negotiation and the overall contracts and the terms and the net was a topic, but we were never talking about the individual compensation. Now they ended up taking a different offer because that offer kept improving. So what I saw is that my seller, through the negotiation and different things with multiple offers, was getting better and better, but never was my seller concerned about the bananas being paid to any party. My seller was concerned about the terms that they wanted and the rent back that they wanted, and then looked at the net and they were comfortable with the net. So I think that it's really important for us to not, and neither agent, another observation was neither agent called me and asked me if I was buyer friendly or asked me about the compensation. They presented offers that included the compensation. So I think that the sooner that agents can get out of their mindset that they need to have this conversation as a buyer's agent with the listing agent, and as soon as the listing agents don't think that it's their place to talk about what the seller will do or won't do, or if you're worth it or not worth it, and just present the damn offer, we're going to move forward and be able to actually work out some of the kinks that the system might have, right? So I think that that's something important to remember as well. Ladies, we are so thankful, and we want to make sure we wrap this up delivering huge value. So Mindy, Megan, and Kim, what we would love is if you could share the biggest piece of advice that you have for an agent right now, or the biggest aha or win, whatever you want, just that power takeaway that the ladies can wrap from this call. And we can kick off with you, Kim.
Oh, great. Okay, well, I guess if I had to boil it down to one thing, I would practice. I would just really practice. I have never been a person who really wanted to practice scripts. I'm like, every time I would sit in something and it was like, we're going to role play, I would be like, I want to leave immediately. And that you just can't avoid it. And so I think you have to find your people that you can practice with. And I think you have to practice in a lot of different ways. But everybody needs that. So like, I have a group of like 5 agents, and we have a text thread, and those are the people that I'm going to practice with. Those are the people that I'm going to ask questions in the middle of a negotiation of like, oh my God, what do you guys do when X happens or Y happens? Like, just, it doesn't mean you have to be doing this with a ton of people, but just find your people and make sure you put time into your craft, because at the end of the day, you're being hired because you're an expert in this. And so you're going to start to gain confidence once you know the words that you want to say, and it becomes easier and easier and easier, but you cannot avoid the work on this one.
So good, Kim. Whoever, Mindy, Megan, whoever wants to go next.
I'll go. Mine is communicate. I can't express enough like how important it is to basically talk to your client, but also communicate with other agents, like Kim said. But even just if you're questioning, like, hey, have you ever done this before? I think communication is key.
That is really good, Megan.
I would say that, a lot of times with brand new agents or people new to the industry, we tell them that they have to work on their confidence and they have to work on believing in what they do. And both of those things are completely impossible if you've never done it before. And the same is true for introducing this idea, and the idea that you have to just build your confidence and just believe in who you are and your value and what you do. Those two things are impossible unless you can start to define your own success, to give yourself enough wins so that you start to feel more confident and believe in what you do, because you've been the defining factor of what success looks like. So I always say, when you're going into a situation, to have 3 levels of success defined before you walk in. 1, what is the worst case scenario of the best options, right? Like you gain a new client, or you have a conversation, or even just you practice this, right? Like maybe that's just the least that you can get out of the situation. Number 2 is, what are you there to actually get? So maybe that's securing the client, or maybe the referral, or whatever it might be. And then the 3rd level of success is, what could you get if today was your birthday and you got absolutely everything that you ever wanted? And maybe that's 3 new clients and 3 new referrals, and everyone pays you twice the compensation that you thought that you were going to get, right? And that gives you this huge play space that no matter how you leave the conversation, you are succeeding. And those little by little wins for yourself is what's actually going to help you gain that confidence and believe in what it is that you're doing.
So good. Ladies, we cannot thank you enough. And this is what it really is about. As we navigate the new norm, it is about rising the tide. And an opportunity that we have here is to really elevate how the public perceives our industry. We have been pouring our blood and sweat and tears into mastering our craft and serving our clients for years. And unfortunately, the industry, the public hasn't seen that. And so get excited, because this is the moment for us to take the professionalism in real estate back and to show why, online platforms shouldn't be what represents you in a transaction. And so we will continue to bring value. We have 4 more weeks of navigating NAR. And so these ladies will be back one more time. And we are just so thankful to have such tremendous leaders inside of our community that you can lean into. So you're always welcome to connect with any of our leaders. And we will be back here next Monday for week 3. So thank you all so much. Bye, guys. Have a blessed day. Thank you, ladies. We appreciate you.